On the cold night of April 14th, 1912, the world's most luxurious ship, the RMS Titanic, is speeding through the icy waters of the North Atlantic, unaware she has just hours left above the waves. More than a century later, this tragedy still lingers in our collective memory. But the story I'm about to tell you is not just one of maritime failure or hubris alone. No, this is a tale of a dark omen, one whispered in books, foretold in dreams, and hidden in ancient tombs, long before the Titanic ever touched the sea. Welcome to Alex Reid's Strangest Files, where behind every great tragedy, there might just be a curse waiting to be revealed. Tonight, to commemorate the 113th anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic, let's dive beneath the surface of history into a world of strange warnings, eerie coincidences, and secrets buried deep in time. Because some believe this wasn't just a maritime disaster, but the final chapter in a curse that haunted the Titanic from the very beginning. If you thought you knew everything about the Titanic, this episode is for you. So, let's get into it. This is Fated Voyage, the curse of the Titanic. "14 years before the Titanic disaster, a little-known American writer named Morgan Robertson penned a novella titled Futility, or The Wreck of the Titan. The story follows a disgraced naval officer, John Rowland, demoted to a mere deckhand aboard a magnificent ocean liner called Titan. Early in the journey, the Titan strikes a smaller vessel, killing its crew. The officers hush it up, and when Rowland tries to speak out, they attempt to silence him, but things are just getting started. Soon after, the Titan slams into an iceberg. The ship sinks quickly. Only 13 people survive. Rowland ends up stranded on the ice, clinging to life alongside a young girl, the daughter of his former love interest. He fights off hypothermia. He fights off a polar bear. And eventually, they're rescued. Back on land, he's left to wrestle with legal fallout and a shot at personal redemption. Now, pause for a second. A giant British ocean liner named Titan, hailed as Unsinkable, sailing in April across the icy Atlantic from America to Ireland, striking an iceberg at night and sinking with devastating speed, 14 years before the Titanic. So, was it just a chilling coincidence, or a prophetic warning the world ignored? I'll let you decide. But don't make up your mind just yet, because what comes next only deepens the mystery. Both ships were about 800 feet long. Both could carry around 2,500 passengers. Both sank with massive loss of life due to too few lifeboats. In the aftermath of Titanic's real-life tragedy, futility was pulled from obscurity and hailed as prophecy. Could Robertson have been channeling something supernatural? Or was this an eerie alignment of fiction and fate? Either way, it set the tone. The Titanic wasn't just a ship, it was a story already written. Fate, if it is a force, a presence, a shadow behind the curtain, seemed disturbingly committed to the sinking of the Titanic. So committed, in fact, that it ensured the ship would sail with far too few lifeboats. Just 20 in total. Enough for barely half the souls aboard. A ship hailed as the pinnacle of human achievement, outfitted with Turkish baths and grand staircases. but denied the basic means of survival. Why? Alexander Carlisle, one of the men behind the ship's design, had originally called for 64 lifeboats, but he was overruled. Too cluttered, they said. It would ruin the ship's clean, majestic lines. Safety bowed to vanity, and vanity, it seems, was no match for destiny. But the whispers were already there, not literal ones, no voices in the dark corridors of the ship. These were quieter, stranger, flickers of unease, shivers down spines, nightmares that didn't fade after waking. Call them instincts, premonitions, warnings from the veil beyond. Whatever they were, a few people heard them, and some listened. Take George Vanderbilt, one of the wealthiest men in the world at the time. He and his wife had every intention of sailing on Titanic. Their bags were packed, but at the last moment they backed out. Why? Because her mother, terrified, insistent, had felt something. She sensed a coming catastrophe and pleaded with them not to go. They listened. They survived. A whisper followed. Esther Hart also heard it. Traveling with her husband and daughter, she wrote a letter before departure confessing a dreadful feeling, an unshakable sense that something terrible lay ahead. She survived, too. Her husband did not. William T. Stead, a journalist who had written years earlier about ships doomed by too few lifeboats. He warned the world with eerie precision. He even told friends he had visions of his death at sea. And then, as if drawn by some magnetic inevitability, he boarded Titanic anyway. He was wrong. Stead went down with the ship. But before he stepped aboard, he felt it. Something was wrong. A heaviness he couldn't shake. He told friends he had a bad feeling about this voyage. And, with a strange finality, he said he wouldn't be coming back. His body was never recovered, but his writings, those eerie, oddly specific warnings, and his visions, still echo like ghostly premonitions scribbled into history itself. It's as if he had glimpsed the ending, but couldn't escape the script. And then, there was J.P. Morgan, the financier of the Titanic herself. This was his ship, his vision, his legacy. He had a luxurious suite reserved. His bags were already on board. But at the very last moment, without any public explanation, he canceled his trip. Some say he was ill, others claim he simply wanted to extend his stay in France. But when you're the most powerful man tied to the ship, and you back out at the 11th hour, it raises questions. Did he know something? Did he feel something? Historians will tell you there's no evidence of conspiracy, that coincidences happen, that intuition is not evidence. But in a story already haunted by eerie warnings, ghostly dreams, and prophetic writings, Morgan's absence hangs heavy, like another whisper ignored by the world, but heard clearly by those attuned to fate. Why did J.P. Morgan stay behind? Maybe it was chance, maybe comfort, or maybe it was survival. But the premonitions weren't the only warnings. For those who knew how to read the signs, not in dreams but in the stars, there was something else. A silent conspiracy unfolding above. The sky itself had begun to shift, as if it too sensed what was coming. It offered no words, only patterns. Patterns that, to the keen eye, spelled out an unspoken omen. A cosmic arrangement that would coincide with the Titanic's maiden voyage in ways too precise, too deliberate, to be dismissed as chance. April 1912 marked the rise of a rare supermoon, an astronomical phenomenon where the moon swings unusually close to Earth, making it appear larger, brighter, and more potent than usual. On that particular night, the moon glared down at the Titanic with a cold, watchful eye. Combined with heightened solar activity, spikes in radiation from the sun capable of disrupting magnetic fields and stirring Earth's tides, the conditions created something scientists now call a perfect storm for iceberg migration. The pull of this celestial choreography may have released an unusually high number of icebergs from Greenland's glaciers, flooding the North Atlantic with silent sentinels of doom. These weren't normal icebergs drifting lazily in predictable paths. They were massive, fast-moving behemoths, set loose by a rare alignment of cosmic forces. In fact, satellite reconstructions and historical ice maps have shown that 1912 had one of the highest iceberg concentrations in history, especially along the very shipping lanes the Titanic followed. What are the chances that the largest, most unsinkable ship ever constructed would launch its maiden voyage through waters laced with floating knives, guided not just by chance, but by the invisible hand of the cosmos? The same supermoon that brightened the night sky also eliminated shadows, making it harder for lookouts to detect contrasts on the water. A tragic irony, the moonlight that illuminated the heavens blinded the eyes below. When you begin to connect the dots, a chilling pattern emerges, not of human folly alone, but of something written in the stars. Was the sinking a tragedy of engineering and arrogance, or a fated convergence, the final movement of a cosmic symphony that had been building for centuries? Did the Titanic's voyage intersect with a celestial reckoning no one could foresee, but some unknowingly felt in their bones? The heavens were shifting that night. The earth was trembling, and perhaps deep in the void of space, something was watching, waiting for the exact moment the greatest ship ever built would cross a point of no return. But perhaps the cruelest twist wasn't cosmic at all, but entirely human. For all the talk of rare moons and displaced glaciers, the men standing in the Titanic's crow's nest that night were blind to what lay ahead, literally. The ship's lookout binoculars, usually kept locked in a storage box on the bridge, were missing. Locked away in a storage cabinet, unreachable because the key had accidentally been taken ashore by a reassigned officer, David Blair, just days before the voyage. The lookouts, scanning the horizon with nothing but their bare eyes, were left vulnerable against the vast black sheet of the Atlantic. No binoculars, no shadows, just stillness. And in that stillness, death was waiting. Was it mere oversight, or a quiet twist of fate, engineered by something far colder than the water below? What are the odds that the sea would be crowded with drifting giants, that the moon, instead of revealing them, would turn them into ghosts, hidden in plain sight from the naked eye, and that in a ship hailed as the pinnacle of human achievement, no one thought to fetch a spare key for a box of binoculars? Maybe it really was just a tragic alignment of errors, or maybe, just maybe, the heavens set the stage, but fate made sure no one saw the final act coming. And in the end, that iceberg was never the first warning. It was the last. To the very last moment, Titanic could have escaped its destiny, only if someone had truly listened. Only if the heavens, the ice, the instincts, the whispers, and the warnings hadn't all been so tragically ignored. Because despite everything, the size, the speed, the pride, Titanic didn't sail into the iceberg blindly. It sailed through a chorus of cautions and chose silence. That morning at 9 a.m., the RMS Caronia sent out the first call. Bergs, growlers, and field ice, those were the exact words. The message reached the bridge. It reached Captain Smith. He thanked them and did nothing. Maybe he assumed there was time. Or maybe, like many aboard, he believed the myth that Titanic could weather anything. But it was the first spark, the first chance to alter the ending, and it slipped by, quiet and unchallenged. Just before noon, approximately 11:45 a.m., the Noordam sent word of much ice directly in Titanic's path. The message was posted in the chart room, seen, understood, not acted upon. The ship pressed on at full speed, 22 knots through the gathering dark. They changed course ever so slightly, yes, but not because of any urgency. It was precaution, not fear. And by then, fear might have been exactly what they needed. By early afternoon, around 1:42 p.m., RMS Baltic relayed another message. This one came with coordinates, exact positions of heavy field ice, passed on from the Athenae. Captain Smith read it. He wrote a polite reply. Then he gave it to J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of the White Star Line. Ismay, enthralled with Titanic's grandeur, pocketed the message. Maybe he showed it off. Maybe he just wanted to forget it. Either way, it never made it to the officers on watch. Another chance, another warning buried. Then came the SS America, a few minutes later. A German liner, not speaking directly to Titanic, but broadcasting a chilling observation nonetheless. Large icebergs at 50 degrees west. Titanic's wireless operator received the message and acknowledged it. But instead of raising the alarm, he treated it like an errand. Forwarded it to the U.S. Hydrographic Office and left it off the captain's desk. No one on the bridge ever saw it. Another thread in the unraveling web, dismissed as background noise. At 7:30 p.m., SS Californian radioed that it had seen 3 massive icebergs and had stopped for the night. The message was intercepted, brought to the bridge. An officer, possibly Second Officer Lightoller, read it. The lookouts were told to be sharp, but still no reduction in speed, no slowing of the engines. Titanic was, after all, built to make headlines, and slowing down would mean arriving late to New York. Icebergs or not, she raced onward. But the true warning, the one that could have changed everything, came at 9:40 p.m. from the Mesaba. That ship reported a massive ice field stretching across Titanic's course. Large bergs, heavy pack ice, coordinates spelled doom. Jack Phillips, Titanic's wireless operator drowning in personal messages from wealthy passengers, received it. He acknowledged it, but he never forwarded it to the bridge. It wasn't marked urgent, so it was filed away, as the ship sailed directly toward the trap. And then, the final chance. 10:55 p.m. The Californian, now completely surrounded by ice, sent one last desperate warning.
"We are stopped and surrounded by ice,"
the operator said. The message was informal, loud, and interrupted Phillips' transmissions. Still overloaded, Phillips snapped back.
Shut up! I'm working Kate Race!"
The radio went silent. The Californian's operator powered down and went to bed. 45 minutes later, Titanic would meet the iceberg, without binoculars, without preparation, and without time to react. The rest is history. If anyone still doubts that Titanic was doomed, that this wasn't the unfolding of something pre-written, pre-arranged, they need only to look at the pattern. 7 separate iceberg warnings, coordinates, descriptions, names, received, read, acknowledged, and then discarded. The iceberg was never a surprise. It was the consequence of choices, or perhaps the echo of something darker, a fate that kept knocking, louder and louder, until it was finally heard. Too late. "11 p.m., April 14, 1912. Coordinates 41 degrees, 43 minutes, 32 seconds north, 49 degrees, 56 minutes, 26 seconds west. A shape emerges from the black, looming, jagged, silent. Iceberg, right ahead. The cry tears through the calm, and chaos follows. Within seconds, Titanic veers hard to port. Her engines are thrown into full reverse, but it's far too late. The iceberg scrapes along the starboard side, carving open a fatal 300-foot gash below the waterline. At first, there's confusion, then a terrible calm. Water floods 5 compartments at a rate that leaves the pumps powerless. Titanic is doomed. The ship was built to float with up to 4 compartments breached, not 5. In the moments that follow, there is no explosion, no great shudder, just a sickening realization in the quiet. The Unsinkable is sinking. Officers pace the deck in denial. Passengers sip brandy, unaware they've stepped into a myth. Beneath them, the cold Atlantic begins its slow, relentless invasion. Captain Edward J. Smith, the White Star Line's most senior commander, moves through the decks like a man already entombed, giving orders with grim resolve. Wireless operators Jack Phillips and Harold Bride send out desperate distress calls, CQD, CQD, and finally, SOS, the first ever used at sea. The Carpathia answers the call, but she is over 4 hours away, and the clock is running out. By 2 a.m., April 15th, the bow is swallowed, and panic blooms like frostbite. Lifeboats, half-filled, are lowered into blackness. Flares explode in the sky, desperate cries that no ship will answer in time. Screams pierce the night as people jump, fall, or cling to whatever they can. The band plays on, hymns rising into the night as chaos spreads. Fathers kiss children goodbye. Stewards force back crowds. In the final minutes, the stern lifts into the air, towering like a tombstone against the stars. Some pray, some leap. Some cling to rails until the very end. But the nightmare has just started. At 2:20 a.m., the great ship groans, buckles, snaps in half, the lights flickering out in her final breath. And just like that, RMS Titanic vanishes beneath the sea. Silence follows, but not peace. Just the sounds of the North Atlantic and the cries of those left floating in the dark. Captain Smith sank with his ship. Some say he was last seen in the wheelhouse. Others claim he leapt into the sea. Among the lost, millionaire John Jacob Astor IV, department store magnate Isidore Straus and his wife Ida, journalist William T. Stead, and over 1,500 men, women, and children. Most don't drown. They freeze. The water is just 28 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 2 degrees Celsius, cold enough to kill in minutes. Only 705 survive, pulled from the black by the Carpathia. The Titanic doesn't just sink, it disappears, swallowed by the dark, dragging with it the illusion of mankind's mastery over nature. And yet, perhaps the most haunting twist of all is this: help was right there. Just 5 miles away, the SS Californian floated motionless in the same icy waters, her crew watching Titanic's lights flicker on the horizon. They saw the rockets fired, 8 of them, white and bright, cutting into the sky, but they didn't act. Captain Stanley Lord, skeptical and unmoved, assumed they were company signals or fireworks. The rockets were launched at irregular intervals, not the 1-minute standard used for distress, and that detail, just that, was enough to dull their urgency. No alarm was raised, no course was altered. No one woke the wireless operator who had gone off duty hours before. Had the Californian responded, she could have reached Titanic in time. Lifeboats would not have floated alone for hours. Hundreds of voices might not have faded into the cold. The failure to act became a second tragedy, one of inaction, misjudgment, and silence. Inquiries later condemned Lord's decisions, concluding that many lives could have been saved, but it was too late. By the time the truth surfaced, the sea had already claimed the dead, and the moment to rewrite history had slipped quietly beneath the waves. Some say the Titanic was undone by arrogance. Others say ice. But maybe it was something deeper. A cascade of missed warnings, a sky pulling the sea out of rhythm, and silence just 5 miles away, when a voice might have saved them all. Over 1,500 lives lost, dozens of missed chances. One ship that never should have gone down, and yet somehow always seemed destined to. But from the depths of that tragedy came change. The world listened, finally. In 1914, the Solace Convention was born, Safety of Life at Sea, a direct response to the Titanic's fate. More lifeboats, continuous radio watches, ice patrols. The sea would never be governed the same way again. But the ship's legend only grew. Titanic became a mirror, reflecting not just loss, but the limits of human pride. Its story shaped art, literature, music, and film, a monument to hubris and to the fragile beauty of human ambition. In 1985, the wreck was finally found, 2 miles beneath the Atlantic. Twisted steel, shattered glass, forgotten shoes resting on the ocean floor, and yet, even in ruin, she spoke. We learned from the rust, from the way the ship split, from what time preserved and what it erased. Tonight, we followed her final hours, from the first missed warning to the last flare. We explored whispers of curses and celestial alignments. We heard the cries, the decisions, the silence. And more than a century later, we're still listening. I'm Alex Reid, and this has been the 4th file we've explored together on my podcast, ARSF. If you have thoughts, questions, or theories about Titanic's fate, about what doomed her, or what still lies hidden, I want to hear them. Leave a comment, share your story, because sometimes the strangest files aren't finished yet. And remember, some stories sink into the deep, but they never truly disappear. Next stop, a creature of doom, black as night with piercing red eyes. Said to be a harbinger of catastrophe, it appeared in the shadows just before one of the worst nuclear disasters in human history. The Blackbird of Chernobyl arrives in 1 week. Until then, my fellow strangers, stay curious, stay weird.